ayes.
And the consent agenda is approved. We don't have any comments from city staff, agencies, boards, commissions, authorities with the community forum, nor are there any special presentations or public hearings. I will pass on communications from the mayor, and we will start general comments from city council members in the order that you appear on my screen. Ms. Jones.
I will pass.
Mr. Ramos.
I too will pass.
Mr. Von Lossberg.
Pass.
Mr. Contos.
Check.
Ms. Sherrill.
I just want to have some quick comments here. I wanted to thank all of my constituents that reached out to me in the past week. We've had some nice dialogue back and forth, and I appreciate that. Also, I just want to remind people that as our restrictions lessen, there was a great comment I heard today from the Prime Minister of New Zealand that said we are opening up our economy, not people's social lives. And that is a hard one as an extrovert for me to get, but I think that that is really important just to remember that piece of it. Also, I was watching just before I got on this call, I was watching the PBS News Hour, and I think it's interesting to look at what the bipartisan plan that they're looking at right now has $4 billion for self-isolation in it, and money for 180,000 workers for contact tracing. I know we talked about how much work the health department is doing in that, and actually watching that tonight, I was thinking about Ellen Leahy and all the people involved in the health department's effort to keep us safe and do the right thing. And I'm just really appreciative. And I think that we're going to see some federal funding following that lead. So yeah, I'm just appreciative for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Sherrill. Ms. Vasecka.
I'll pass, thank you.
Ms. Jones, did I already ask you? Ms. Becerra.
I too wanted to thank everyone who has helped us keep Missoula with our numbers as low as they are, and also to ask my fellow Missoulians to exercise caution when going out and congregating. I have seen some large numbers of people that have given me pause, and so while we are listening our restrictions, I hope that everyone exercises a little bit of caution. And again, thank you to everyone who's helped us stay the course.
Ms. Harp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to remind everybody that come this Friday, May 1st, is our annual Missoula Gives, which is an opportunity to really help out our nonprofit partners this year who have been doing a lot of tremendous good in our communities, and they need you more than ever. Thank you.
Ms. Merrick.
I just want to thank all the IT staff and everybody who's made these online meetings possible, and Marty and you and your staff and all the hard work that it took. It's been great. And as I mentioned when I was talking with the mayor earlier today, I would love to see us be able to continue this kind of online participation, either for the council members and for the public into the future. That will, I think we have reached a whole different audience with people who were, paid attention to the last couple of weeks of meetings that I don't think have paid attention to the city council meetings before. So it's reaching more people, and I think that's a win. So I hope that it may not look exactly like this, but I'm hoping that we can incorporate it in some way in the future.
Thank you, Ms. Merritt. Sorry, I had my phone in my ear because I was just testing the phone lines. We don't have anyone in the waiting room, and I just want to make sure they're working, and they are working. Ms. West.
Hi, I would like to get an event on everyone's calendar, and that's coming up May 8th, which is going to be the Missoula Camp Inn, which is hosted by Missoula Parks and Recreation. And I think I'm going to include a recipe on how to make homemade marshmallows so that we can all try out some new things while we're staying at home.
I have made marshmallows, Ms. West, and they're pretty good. Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's lovely to see all of you in the little tiles on my screen. And the extrovert in me is looking forward to the day when we get to see each other in person. But I do really want to emphasize what several of my colleagues said. We are slowly starting to ease up the restrictions, but that does not mean the threat has passed. And I also have seen people gathering and playing on my parks in my community and the playgrounds, and those are not open yet. And we need to practice caution. And the more that we can do that, the better chance we have of slowly opening up and not having to go through a series of opening the doors, slamming the doors, opening the doors, slamming the doors, which will have longer or harder consequences on our economy. So please, everybody, continue to practice social distancing, wear your masks, and continue to stay home. Even though I miss seeing all of you in person, I am still going to continue to be at home and give all of our frontline workers and the health department and the hospitals a fighting chance they can. And this is not over yet. So please be cautious. And that's my comments. Thanks.
Mr. Hess.
Thanks, Mayor. I want to echo Ms. Merritt's comments that I'm really grateful for our city clerk staff. Marty and Kirsten both have worked really hard to make these meetings a success. And our IT staff and our partners at MCAT. I want to highlight two things that are new that were in the press release in advance of tonight's agenda, and those are the voicemail box and the e-comment section. And I want to specifically highlight that we received two public comments via the e-comment. Those are in the public record. They are available for all of council and the public. It's a really nice way for people to provide us comment on their own terms. So, maybe back when we have an comment that the clerk's office has rolled out will allow people to comment from the convenience of home anytime. And we received those comments. We received two very thoughtful comments tonight, and I expect that that'll continue. And I'm really grateful for the fact that we're increasing the opportunity for citizens to engage. We also have a voicemail box. I don't have the number in front of me. Maybe someone can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's 552-6012. And that's an opportunity for people to leave comment that, again, goes into the public record and makes our meetings run more smoothly, and also makes, especially in this virtual context, and also provides that comment in advance of the public meeting. So I want to take a moment to say that I really appreciate receiving comment in advance like that. It gives us time to research the comment. It gives us time to think about the information coming in. It gives us time to ask clarifying questions of staff. So I think we're learning, as someone said earlier in this process, we're building the plane as we fly it. But we are learning how to engage in different ways. And I truly believe that we will come out of this a better decision-making body and a better deliberative government body. I think that we will have new tools, new ways of reaching constituents, new ways for them to reach us. And so I'm grateful for everyone's work. And I think I encourage everyone to view this as an opportunity to learn how to improve our processes along the way as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hess. Did I miss anyone? Okay, good. That amazes me, actually. We have no committee reports this evening. The heart of our meeting will be these items of new business. They are first a motion to have a public hearing on our climate ready plan, and I believe that lives in the Sherrill's committee.
Okay, I'm sorry because I don't have, I'm going to try to get this up. I don't have two screens running here. but we are moving. Hold on, I'm going to exit here and see if I can get into that so I can read it. I apologize. This is not perfect.
It's okay. We're all adapting.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Let's see. Okay. Here we go. I would put a motion just to reschedule the joint public hearing with the Missoula Board of County Commissioners for May 11th, 2020 on the resolution to adopt the climate-ready Missoula, as an issue plan of the Our Missoula City Growth Policy 2035. The public hearing will be open on May 11th, 2020 and remain open for a week. The council will take up the plan for final consideration on May 18th.
Thank you, Ms. Sherrill, and forgive me, I'm going to interrupt for a moment. Ms. Rabine, I just had a report from Ms. Merriam that there's no audio on eScribe stream.
I'm aware of that. I sent you a message in the chat. Can we pause the meeting for a second and let us troubleshoot, please?
We can. We will be in recess for just a moment as we see if we can solve this.
Do we have hold music like that?
No.
Hey, does anyone, I got out of my Zoom screen to read the motion. This is what I was worried about. And now I can just see Stacy in the corner. I can't see anyone else. I can't figure out how to get back in. Any advice?
Bottom, you're seeing like the little tile, and the rest of the context is the agenda. There should be a button that has like an arrow to expand the screen back out for your full screen again on the tile and the.
Got it. Okay, I got it. Thank you. I was always worried about doing that because I didn't know if I could get back.
Mm-hmm.
Here you go, Stace. Can you hear that?
Oh, there we go. Perfect.
Oh, that's the city of Missoula hold music that we got with the new phone system, and then Councilman Dave Strohmeyer raged against the machine, asking us to change that horrible new age tune.
Well, I'm happy to play piano or post horn.
That would probably be much preferable.
I'll warn you now, with the post horn, it only has one note. I might be able to hit an octave, but.
Well, you'll be happy to know, even though we're not all together, I do have my little cup of jelly beans. Just, keep things normal.
I had to go get my own jelly beans because I don't have you to
I know.
you.
If I was a really lovely person, I would like send you all out little like bags of it, little care packages, but I don't have it together enough to do that. And I'm rationing my supply.
Amber, did you get your screen to come back up?
I did. Thank you. It would be better. I don't want to print everything. It'd be better to have something printed or have two screens, which I don't have.
Yeah, I definitely grabbed one of my spare monitors from my office and brought it home because I don't think I could continue to operate without at least two screens. I usually have three.
Yeah, it's nice to have, it's really nice to have an extra screen up. I think I could figure that out upstairs, but I'm trying to find a quiet place in my home.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of, we have another screen, but it might be hard.
That's a challenge for a lot of people. It's just finding a place to do it.
Yeah. My dogs are always trying to get in. They think this is the room that they like to hang out in. So I'm fighting with them anyway. We're not live again yet, are we?
We've been live the whole time, but we're not in
Oh.
order.
Oh, all right. Well, everyone's listening to me talk about my dogs. For some reason, I didn't think they were.
You're not going to get him on the field for 4 years. And so you've wasted a first-round pick. And then in the best receiver draft in the last decade, you didn't get a receiver. And then to make matters worse, you cut your tight end. I know it's a third-round pick of tight end, but how can you do that when you take a first-round pick straight up?
And Ms. Rabine, are you back?
I am. I am back. I hope that we're streaming. I tested on my iPad. I think we are.
Okay. We will be back in order, ladies and gentlemen. There is a motion on the floor from Ms. Sherrill to reschedule a joint public hearing with the Board of Commissioners. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing no hands raised, we have no one in the public comment queue, folks. So we will have a roll call vote.
Okay, on the motion to set the public hearing, Becerra,
Yes.
Contos,
John, you have to unmute yourself.
can someone unmute John Contos, please? Kirsten?
Got it.
Got it, thank you. Hey, John, what do you want to vote on this item?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, big thumbs up, all right.
Turn the music off.
Harp,
Excitedly, yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Merrick,
Yes.
Ramos,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Vasecka,
Yes.
Van Lossberg,
Yes.
and West.
Yes.
Would any of you like to change your votes? That is 12. Oh, sorry, Anderson.
Yes, please.
And now, would any of you like to change your vote? That is 12 ayes.
And the rescheduling is approved. We'll move on to our second item of new business. This is the non-congregate shelter memorandum of understanding. That's the Sleepy Inn lease. And this lives in A&F. And Ms. Jones, if you would make a motion, I can have Mr. Bickle provide some background in the wake of that.
Happy to. I will make the motion to adopt a resolution of the Missoula City Council to enter into a facility use agreement and lease of the real property located in the city of Missoula at 1427 West Broadway Street to Missoula County to operate a non-congregate shelter for homeless individuals who are ordered to isolate or quarantine by the Missoula City County Health Officer.
That motion is in order, and you have that memorandum of understanding in your packets. I can give you a couple of quick updates, and there are staff members here to assist as well. So first, we did close on the facility this afternoon, and we have the keys, but after your vote last week, Adrienne Beck and her team began further assessment of condition of facility and planning for any remediation that needs to happen in advance of occupancy. And that work can begin in earnest. She did some scheduling last week, and that work can begin in earnest this week, anticipating that we will have rooms available for use. We hope by end of this week or early next week. There are a number of factors, including our ability to get, we had a volunteer team lined up, and they ended up with another commitment, so we've had to scramble to sort that. But initial investigation is that the facility is exactly what we thought it was, and remediation is largely what we thought it was, relatively simple and relatively quick. The resolution before you allows us to begin charging rent as soon as it's signed by Missoula County, and begin that reimbursement process to the redevelopment agency, and ultimately local folks should be made whole by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Mr. Bickle, any details of the lease you'd like to highlight?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Dale Bickle, Chief Administrative Officer. I'm going to talk a little bit about the lease and the resolution. Adrian Beck, Aaron Pahan, and Ellen Leahy, the health officer, are all here to talk about what's happening with the non-congregate shelter and next steps. So quickly, there is a resolution that you found with the packet. State law requires a 2/3 majority vote of council in order for the city to lease city property to others, and that resolution provides that authority. The form of that lease is in that facility use agreement. You see. I'll just make a couple of statements about it. You can see that the party that we are contracting with is the Missoula County Office of Emergency Management. Adrian Beck, who's on the call with us, is the head of that Missoula County Department, and she's also head of the Emergency Operations Center that will actually manage that. So the Emergency Operations Center is managed by Missoula County. You can see that all of the operations are the responsibility of OEM under this lease, and all the operating costs. And you can see the provision for insurance and liabilities. The facility property insurance will be covered by the city's insurer, MMIA, and as well as liability for the city's actions related to the operation of the shelter. Missoula County has a similar policy for their actions, and there is an overall umbrella policy that we are seeking from a third party. We received quotes today on that, and we're planning to enter into that. As stated, we're using our best efforts to find a third party insurance agent. You can see the lease has a cost of $1,066 per day. We are once the county gets control of the facility, we believe which is the approval of this lease. And commissioners will look at this lease tomorrow. That's when the lease comes into effect, and the reimbursement could start relative to FEMA. I think rather than provide more detail, I'll turn it over to Adrian, Aaron, and Ellen for further comments about how the shelter operations are coming together, and talk about next steps.
Ms. Beck.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. For the record, I'm Adrian Beck, Director for the Missoula Office of Emergency Management. And I think you'll see that the lease before you and MOU is really just that. It's a way to set expectations of all the parties involved, so that there's no question about who's going to do what, and kind of what those expectations are. The payment for the cost of the facility was calculated on a per unit basis, primarily because when we were in our planning phases with FEMA to establish our non-congregate sheltering plan, we had to come up with costs that were deemed reasonable. And the easiest way to come up with costs that are deemed reasonable was by taking current GSA rates. Because the facility will be under government kind of control and operation and ownership, we had to take some of the operational costs that we factored in and subtract those from what would be a normal room rate that you would pay at a local hotel. So coming to the $49 per unit per night was really just a way to kind of quantify what we were going to pay for that facility use. It's important to keep in mind that we're not necessarily tying that lease payment to the number of people that we have in there, because really our intention is to have control over the entire facility. So through, as Dale mentioned, in order to have both the city and the county kind of jointly making decisions about the operation of that facility, Ms. Pehan and I will be working closely together to talk through kind of what makes the most sense based on the population that is going to be housed there, in close coordination, obviously, with the health department. A couple of the things that Dale mentioned that have been kind of underway since the last city council meeting were just that, is an assessment of the facility, kind of ground truthing what we needed to do based on professional opinion of contractors and professionals in pest mitigation and abatement. And we stand ready to start those activities at a pretty expedited clip starting on Tuesday morning so that we're able to occupy the facility as quickly as possible. And I'm sure that there'll be questions and I'll stand ready to answer those, but kind of background of that.
Pehan, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate Adrian's comments about the city and the county collaborating on this. And so I'll be the designated staff member for the EOC for the city of Missoula to serve in this role and to collaborate closely with Adrian and her team on how to best operate the facility to support the population that's currently at risk and to ensure that we're looking at all the different funding avenues that we have in the community and how we can best utilize those.
Thank you, Ms. Pehan. And Ms. Leahy.
Just a little update in terms of we continue to need the alternate shelter. We've had folks since the last week that you convened and looked at the purchase. We continue to have folks that we are looking for non-congregate shelter for and doing it in that old piecemeal fashion. And as we begin expanding our testing, now that the Centers for Disease Control, as of Friday, came out with new symptoms that have been shown to be associated with COVID, that really opens the door in our screening of who is eligible for testing much wider than it has been. And I expect that alone will increase the need for this facility. So I'm very thankful for the coming up with this out of what seemed very difficult situation, and for Adrian, Aaron, and everybody who's really ready to hit the ground and get it up to speed so it's clean and sanitized. We have new mattresses coming in and things like that so that we can feel good about giving these folks a safe and clean and appropriate shelter. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Leahy. Questions or comments from council members? If you use the hand raise, I would be grateful. Sherrill.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, Dale, I think you said that the daily rate for Lease and Hotel was $1,066. It's actually $1,666. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Sorry if I misspoke.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to clarify that for anyone watching. Also, Ellen, I know that I asked this question via email earlier today, but I'm curious if you could talk about the metrics around how we decide, and I know that it's not perfect and we don't understand everything about this virus, so I want to give you that to start out with, but just the metrics around how we decide when we don't need this facility anymore, because I notice in the MOU it's a 14-day contract of cancellation from the county or from us. So could you just speak to that a bit for me?
Well, actually, the reason that 14 days is in the contract, because let's say this doesn't directly answer your question, but just to give some background, let's say for whatever reason the contract had to be canceled by either party, and FEMA does require an ease of getting out of the situation. 14 days is the required quarantine period, and I would have been comfortable going shorter than that, except that is the incubation period. So if we had someone in there, we would of course need to have that person in there before we ended the contract. But to your main question, if we were not dealing with a novel virus that we don't know generally what it's going to do next, if it's going to have seasonality and then maybe come back, we aren't dealing with that. If we were dealing with just sort of the normal circumstance, like let's say pertussis or something like that, which is also a respiratory virus, what we generally do to mark the end of an outbreak is we go 2 full incubation periods without any new cases before you would say that outbreak is over. So for pertussis, that could be 21 times 2, so 42 days. If you get a new case in there, you start your clock again. With infectious diseases that are a little harder to test for or to know that they're present, as is sometimes the case, we might sometimes be a little more prudent and go with 3 incubation periods. So at the very least with COVID, the very least would be 2 incubation periods. And I would say that we'd want to make sure that we were not in a seasonal reduction of disease, as you sometimes see with respiratory viruses. So probably we would see how it looks in the fall, for example. I do want to emphasize that as long as the virus is present, however, in the community, we do need to have beds available. So even if it's sitting empty for a few days or longer, the beds need to be available as soon as a person has been identified for testing and is tested. So that gives me sort of an open-ended answer to your question.
Lady.
May I have a follow-up comment, Mayor?
Sure.
Thank you. I think that's really interesting. It's just something as I was looking through the MOU that I thought, how do we decide that? Like what are, I know that there is a scientific basis for that, but I also want to point out, one thing we talked about last week was the fact that this FEMA reimbursement for this rent is going to offset the purchase price. So we don't know how long we're going to need it. I want to first say that, but under the 1,666 per day in 3 months, it would be over $106,000, and in 6 months it would be $213,000. So if we're going through the fall, I just want to point out that is a significant offset to the purchase price. Obviously, the important thing is that we're able to, keep people safe, keep our economy running. All those millions of arguments and reasons we talked about last month. But I appreciate that. I think it's just really interesting to understand how those metrics are used and how we're going to go forward. And I appreciate everyone's leadership in that. Thank you.
Excuse me, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to quickly dovetail off of the great questions that my colleague, Ms. Sherrill, asked, you had said, Ms. Leahy, or it may be Ms. Beck, who are best to answer this question. There will be a period in terms of ebbs and flows of how many people are going to be utilizing this service, but that daily lease payment is for the entirety of the contract, whether there be no people or 20 people in the facility. Just to
That's correct.
That's correct.
Want to make sure that was on the record. And I think to Ms. Sherrill's point, it does show that there will be an income stream back to the city to offset the purchase price, which I think is an important thing to note. So thank you all for your work and leadership on this.
Ms. Merrick?
Just real quick, Aaron, maybe you can answer this question. What happened to the 11 people that had been staying there who were not identified as being isolated or quarantined, but had been staying there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do know that the property owner offered all of those individuals a room at the same rate at a motel that he owns just down the road, the City Lodge, in the same area. So if those folks were accessing services or had work nearby, they didn't have to experience a geographic relocation. I also know that we were able to confirm connection or connect a few of those folks with the coordinated entry system, people who did express readiness for a more permanent housing situation. So it is our understanding that everyone was given the opportunity to transfer to a similar unit at the same rate. And so our hope is that folks took up the owner on that offer. And then again, we're working with a couple of folks who are ready to move into a more permanent situation.
Thanks.
Ms. Jones.
Thank you. A lot of my questions have already been answered. Thanks for the information that you guys put out. But I had a question. In the lease, there is a term that a City of Missoula employee will be a member of the Emergency Operation Command, and I just needed some clarification. Is that like a liaison position, or will that be a person who's spending hours every week on the Sleepy Inn? And if so, how is that financed? Is that financed under FEMA?
That is Ms. Pahan, and Ms. Beck can answer the question.
So as we talked through, I think it was important to have kind of a joint delegation of authority to make decisions, not only from the county's perspective, but also from the city's perspective, as these are city and county residents, and we want this operation to be successful. To the extent that Ms. Pehan is spending an inordinate amount of time, by that I mean more than her regular 40 hours per week, that is reimbursable by FEMA. But to the extent that the work is kind of within her normal scope of day-to-day work or similar, it is not reimbursable within that standard 40-hour work week. I don't anticipate that this will be an enormous time commitment. It is simply for the two of us to be able to collaborate and make decisions jointly about the operations, and any additional funding sources that we may be able to find that are outside of FEMA that can help us be successful. That is really the intent.
Thank you.
Mr. Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I promise these will be briefer than last Monday. So my first question is, how long specifically do we think this is going to take? I mean, I've heard rapidly, quickly, timely fashion, but how long specifically are we thinking it's going to take to bring all of that stuff up to snuff, to where we can start moving people in?
Ms. Beck?
So I hesitate to provide any kind of hard and fast date or timeline because while we have spent the last week trying to learn as much as we can about the facility, in any kind of construction project, there are going to be unknowns. And so we've tried to build those into our planning assumptions, into our timeline. And as the mayor mentioned in his opening remarks, we did have a pretty capable and ready volunteer labor force that can move very quickly, who unfortunately was called to a more urgent assignment in South Dakota. So we're quickly working a plan B for that, which in all honesty may set us back by 24 to 72 hours. So late this week to early next is absolutely our goal and our timeline, and we will continue to work for that. But certainly, I apologize that I can't give you a hard and fast date, but know that it is our intention, and we're very committed to making it occupational as soon as we can.
Okay, that's perfect. And the reason why I asked, Ms. Beck, is just because in the FEMA letter it says my approval is limited to the activities and costs associated with sheltering individuals through May 10th, 2020, unless the public health needs terminate earlier. The state must obtain an additional approval for time extensions, which must include reassessment of continuing need for emergency NCS from a state or local public health official, as well as detailed justification for continuing need for the emergency NS. So the reason why I'm asking is just because this approval only extends to the 10th, and if we're a week out, I mean, that's going to put us literally almost just 1 week of approval until May 10th. So obviously, I'm sure Ms. Leahy will probably try and extend that. That's fine. But right now, this letter that we have only approves the usage through May 10th. So that's just why I was curious about it, because it just seems like we just made a $1.1 million purchase. God knows how much in approvals. And we're only going to have the thing for a week, potentially. So that's just why I was asking that question.
Further questions or comments, Mr. Ramos?
Yes. So my next question is, so it kind of goes back to the $1,600 a day, and the fact that we were getting it for the rooms from FEMA, even though essentially it's not going to be whether those rooms are occupied or not. And I'm confused by that because in this letter, bullet point 3.2, I think, I don't have it, but I'll read it here. My approval does not currently include the reimbursement of costs for the sheltering of asymptomatic individuals that are not among populations identified above and whose living situation may make them unable to adhere to social distancing guidelines. So that to me makes it seem like they are going to discriminate based on who's in the room, because that's based on who has symptoms and who doesn't. So how do we kind of come up with the fact that we're going to be getting paid for all the rooms regardless of if they're occupied or not? Because if that was the case, then it wouldn't matter if an asymptomatic individual was in those rooms, would it not? I'm confused.
Well,
Ms. Beck?
So I can attempt to answer that in that, so we have sought the use of the entire facility so that it allows us to address and to plan for the unknown future of how many folks we may have to shelter at any given time. And so having the entire facility up for our use is extremely beneficial for that, and it is eligible under FEMA reimbursement guidelines. There are 3 classifications of individuals that are qualified to be housed in non-congregate shelter. The first is obviously those that are under an isolation order per a health officer, those people that have tested positive and need to self-isolate and to recover from the illness for fear that they would infect other people. The other category is those that need to quarantine per a health officer's order for the same purposes. They may not have tested positive yet. They may be awaiting a test result, but they have been exposed to COVID and are likely to either become positive or need to provide for that quarantine period. The third classification of individuals are those that are deemed high risk per the CDC guidance. So those individuals that are 65 and older that have underlying health conditions that also have nowhere else to go as far as to self-isolate while just preventing their exposure in the community.
Okay, I totally get that, and that, I guess maybe this is a question for FEMA. I mean, just because in our lease agreement it says those first 2 classifications, and then it says are asymptomatic but high risk over 65 with underlying health conditions, and then the FEMA gal specifically says that they will not reimburse those costs outlined in bullet point 3 of that. So I guess that's just where I'm confused on it, because that then goes to the crux of the issue. Why are they going to be coming in and checking who's in there if they're renting out, if they're reimbursing us for all rooms? Why would you put that in there?
My understanding is we are required to the capacity available to shelter those folks. So that was one of the requirements that we had to put into the plan to show that we would do that for the pre-approval. So I don't have the document.
Do you know where? Yeah, do you know where I'm referencing? Because this might be helpful. Because specifically in there, I'm looking at it on the website right now. It says it's on page 2 of the letter from FEMA, and it says my approval does not currently include the reimbursement of costs for the sheltering of asymptomatic individuals that are not among the populations identified above and whose living situation may make them unable to adhere to social distancing guidelines. So, I mean, I think fair enough. I get where you're coming from on that, and my next question, I don't know why I should put that in there. It didn't make a lot of sense because we weren't necessarily asking for that. But here we go. So this is kind of my final question. So, well, it's not, but the city will provide the facility to the Missoula County Office of Emergency Management in good working order, and the city will be responsible for maintenance of the facility, including all major maintenance needed relating to structural, plumbing, HVAC, electrical, smoke detection, doors, windows, and fixtures, and blah, blah, blah. The Missoula County Office will provide for cleaning, blah, blah, blah. So my question is, that first few things that I just rattled off, how much is that going to cost? Are we bidding that out? Do we have an estimate right now? I mean, that obviously needs to be done before we can move people in there. So how much is that going to cost?
So our sense of things, Mr. Ramos, based on an inspection, is that there are no structural issues we need to deal with, nor are we aware today of any plumbing or other issues that you mentioned. If those issues do arise, we'll pay for them on a case-by-case basis, but we believe that based on inspection in advance of purchase and also Ms. Beck's diligence over the course of the last week, that those expenses would be minimal.
Okay. And minimal, how much is that roughly? Under 100,000, over 100,000? I mean, I really don't know.
definitely under 100,000.
Okay. Okay, perfect. And so where's that money going to come from? Is that going to come from the general fund, from the MRA?
We would most likely use general fund dollars and also apply for reimbursement.
Okay, perfect. So when these lease payments come back in, this actually is my last question. So when these lease payments come back in, we talked about this briefly on Monday night, but I just wanted to try and figure it out. So where does the money go when we get these lease payments back? Back to the MRA? To the general fund? Okay, to the MRA. So, and then, oh, go ahead.
Back to Urban Renewal District 2.
Okay, perfect. And then my last question, I apologize, I lied before. This just sparked another thing. So I know we're talking about paying down some principal with it. I mean, just judged right now based on the date that the current approval of FEMA funds is through. That's only $13,000. It's going to be able to pay back the $1.1 million. So I know that not all of that is going to be net. So how much gross are we expecting to have to pay per day of that $1,600 that we're going to have to pay to reimburse actual operating costs, and then how much of that are we going to be able to use to pay off any of that principal?
So we have no debt. So there's
no, I know. So the initial 1.1 million, which is the pay down of the purchase, how much are we going to be using? Because my understanding is that we're hoping that some of this will pay back some of the costs of acquisition.
Well, what it will do is pay back the fund that funded the acquisition, which is Urban Renewal District 2. And that will happen at that 1,600 and change rate a day.
Okay, and then so everything else they're gonna cover cleaning and other stuff like that. So 1,600 net per day, and okay, so roughly $13,000 at today's current date of FEMA approval of $20 until May 10th.
Yeah, but as you I hope heard last week in Ms. Beck's explanation, the way that FEMA rolls out these agreements is that they do them for relatively short periods of time based on changing circumstances on the ground. Her guidance from FEMA and experience with FEMA is that we simply will renew that approval with FEMA and move forward as long as the shelter is necessary. I mean, FEMA created this category because it believes that there is a need in communities like ours.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Von Lossberg.
Thanks. A comment and a question. I just wanted to highlight what Ms. Pan mentioned about a couple individuals entering through the coordinated entry system and hopefully finding a way into some longer term housing. As she and others have pointed out in the past, it's not an economical proposition to rent at a place like this, either weekly or monthly or so. So that's a really good news story that a couple folks have engaged through the coordinated entry system. Question I have, I think is for Adrian. At the beginning of the outbreak, or fairly quickly thereafter, Partnership Health Center started doing regular screening for unsheltered folks at the Poverello and perhaps additional folks. That was happening on a regular basis. My assumption is that's continuing to happen, but can you confirm that?
Yes, the PHC in their partnership and collaboration with the Poverello Center does screening twice weekly of their population.
Okay. I see no additional hands. Is there any further discussion? We have no one in the waiting room, therefore no comment, and we'll have a roll call vote on the memorandum of understanding.
So is this on both the resolution and the memorandum of understanding? My understanding is the resolution includes the authorization for the memo and the lease.
Correct.
Yes? Okay. Contos.
No.
Contos votes no. I guess I don't need to repeat it. Folks can hear it on the air. Harp.
Yes.
Harp. Hess.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Merritt.
Yes.
Ramos.
No.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Vasecka.
No.
Von Lossberg.
Yes.
West.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
And Becerra.
Yes.
Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 9 ayes and 3 nays.
And the resolution is approved, and thank you, Ms. Leahy, Ms. Beck, and Ms. Pahan for your time this evening, and Mr. Bickle as well. Our final item of new business is a change to the Missoula City Council rules, and that happens in the Administration and Finance Committee as well.
And I will make a motion now. This is the time I will make the recommended motion to amend City Council Rule 1 to move the start time for City Council meetings from 7 p.m. to 6 p.m.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. That motion is in order. Is there a discussion on the motion? Ms. Merritt?
Hi, thanks guys for bringing this. I've a couple of, or I guess one question anyway. Is this intended to be from here on out, even if we are able to go back to having in-person meetings? That's the intention, is that that our in-person meetings would also start at 6 o'clock in the future?
Certainly, my suggestion is that it continue. We're doing this for a couple of reasons. One is, I think, for the convenience of folks who are interested in participating in these council meetings. We tend not to do our best business as human beings around midnight. And that doesn't mean we won't have long council meetings, but it may be a little bit easier to start at 6 for a lot of folks, including our staff. I think it's helpful for staff not to have that sort of 2-hour lag between the end of their regular workday and the beginning of their second shift, as we call it. So I think this is just a good piece of business in general for the body.
Okay, and then I just have one comment as far as the time goes. I know we also kind of kicked around, or it has been thrown out there, that maybe a 5:30 start time would be appropriate. And I would just like to weigh in that I think 6 o'clock would be better. I mean, right now, my commute from my regular job to city council meetings is pretty short. But in the future, when we go back to being at work, at the office, and I need some time in between that 5 o'clock hour and 6 o'clock hour to at least make sure my children have something to eat before I go off to council meetings. That's my 2 cents. I prefer 6.
Mr. Hess.
Thank you. This has been coming up since I joined council a little over 6 years ago. We first had a discussion about changing start time, and I think this strikes a balance where it allows people to get home, get a quick bite to eat if they get off at 5 o'clock. It allows, but it also allows a reasonable end time. And I think this comes up now really as we are in the spirit of figuring out how to improve our processes. So one thing that we were reminded of last week is just that public comment gets, public comment and council involvement gets challenging into the night. It's not necessarily all that fair to the public. So this, I think, is truly an effort to make us more accessible. And I am supportive of 6 o'clock. Thought a lot about 5:30 as well. Thought about 5 o'clock. And I think this is a good balance. I think that it's a good start. If it works well and we find that we want to adjust it again in the future, that door's open.
Mr. Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I want to concur with my colleagues. I mean, I initially was thinking 5:30 was probably better, but certainly Ms. Vasecka reminded me that a lot of people don't get off work until 5:30. So At the end of the day, though, I think 6 is great, and I think that it's actually going to encourage more people to come to council meetings, because I think that when they get home, certainly there's enough time before 5 and 7 to kind of get comfortable in the house and not really want to drag themselves down to the least riveting meeting in the world to come participate in that. So I think this is great. Overall, I really appreciate kind of the looking ahead on this, and I think this is a really good change that's going to allow for more public participation and still allow people to have kind of that balance between being a good citizen and participating and certainly having some family time too.
Mr. Lossberg.
Thanks. I was going to respond to Julie's question, and I was the sponsor of the change. And yes, the intent is to keep this going forward. I think it's important to note that these are council's rules, and council, it's the will of the body here in terms of what we do. I've heard loud and clear from folks about the desire to go earlier, and as others have said, there's a number of benefits for folks in the public. I'm hopeful it's helpful for folks in the media. I hope it helps council members and staff. So I think it's a win across the board. As others have said, I will just weigh in briefly and say I put in the referral the 6 after consulting with a few folks, understanding that we'd likely have a discussion around 5:30. I just want to add my voice to others who have said that 6 provides some time at the end of the sort of classic workday, personally, selfishly for us, with our kiddo, as well as like others have mentioned on that front. So I think it strikes a good balance, gets us going an hour earlier. My anticipation is we would formalize this. There's some other cleanup things we need to do in our rules. They haven't been touched on for a while, so we could take care of it with a formal change to the rules as well as some other things. But sounding like there's some good support for this.
Ms. Becerra.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate the change in time. I think that while it's important to consider or make sure that council's needs and preferences are met as well as those of staff, what's really truly I think important for me is that we address those who are going to benefit from this the most, and that is the public. So I am very supportive of 6 o'clock. Seems to me like it's a good compromise. It's a time that would allow a lot more people to potentially participate. And that to me is a great step towards a robust public process. So I appreciate the change.
Ms. Vasecka.
I'm also in support of the 6 o'clock change. I do have a concern during the transitioning process. If some folks didn't get the memo that we are going to be moving to 6 o'clock from 7 o'clock, and they don't chime in until 7, and they do have public opinion or public comment, is there any way that we'll be able to address that?
Yeah, we'll be hammering it in the media as much as possible, as well as social and all of those things that you young people pay attention to.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? All right, seeing none, we have no one in the waiting room. We'll have a roll call vote.
Okay, on the motion to amend the rules, Harp.
Yes.
Hess.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Merritt.
Yes.
Ramos.
Yes. Yes.
Got it. Sherrill.
Oh.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Vasecka.
Yes.
Von Lossberg.
Yes.
West.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Becerra.
Yes.
Contos.
Sure.
Is that a yes, John?
Yes.
Okay. And did I call Jones? I wasn't sure if I missed that in the roll. Would anyone like to change your vote then? I have 12 ayes. Well, I don't have 12 ayes, but you voted, all of you, 12, yes.
The motion is approved and we have no additional items of new business. Are there any additional items to be referred this evening? Seeing none of those, any miscellaneous communications, petitions, reports, or announcements? Seeing none, as always, I thank you for your service and we will be adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Night. Night.
See you, everybody.